By the late 1920s, it was clear that existing Indian policies weren't working. Just like a failing corporation must undergo a reorganization when its stocks are plummeting, it was time for the federal government to change course in the Reorganization era. In 1928, the Institute for Government Research, led by Lewis Merriam, submitted its report on Indian affairs to the Department of the Interior. The report, referred to as the Merriam Report, criticized the Dawes Act and the federal government's Indian administration. The report showed that Indians were extremely impoverished, had worse health than white Americans, and generally lived below white Americans' standard of living. As a result of the report, allotments decreased, and Congress passed the Indian Reorganization Act in 1934. The Indian Reorganization Act, sometimes called the Indian New Deal, ushered in the government's new policy toward Indians that focused on economic and social success, while still preserving tribal identity. Tribes played active roles in creating the act, and a tribe would have to approve any provision before the provision could apply to the tribe. Key features of the act included restoring tribal control over mineral rights, prohibiting further alienation of Indian land, and extending government trusts on reservations. The 1930s were an active period for new Indian laws. Congress passed the Johnson-O'Malley Act of 1934, which gave the Secretary of the Interior the authority to enter into contracts with tribes, states, and schools to provide education to Indian students. The Indian Arts and Crafts Act of 1935 was passed to promote the Indian arts and crafts industry, which would help tribes economically. The Indian Mineral Leasing Act of 1938 created more uniform leasing regulations for mineral rights on tribal lands to provide tribes with a fair return on minerals and help promote Indian self-government.